Thank you very much, and I welcome all of you from a very short tea break. And we have an amazing panel here, and which represents, from vehicle manufacturing to the fleet operators to charger manufacturing and the technology side of management of charging stations, etc. Also, and overall financing. So we have a very good mix of panel, and I expect to get a lot of deeper insights, not making it at a very overview level of the discussion. So I welcome all of you. Thank you very much for taking out time and joining us today here. Um, and we have 1 hour which have been allocated to us. So um, I'm going to keep at least 10 minutes. So please be ready with the questions in the end of the panel discussion. So, a few weeks back, I was interacting with Mr. Mohan, and two things came in the discussion is that the flagship policy initiatives which Government of India has taken around democratization of the public chargers by allowing or the de-licensing the setting of the charging stations, and also categorizing EV chargers as one of the consumer separate consumers set, not considering them as a commercial consumers, which basically uh, uh, helped many people to come up in the charging business, which is very important for a initial part of the business development in India in any business segment. That too, innovative business like electric mobility, which has a lot of unclarity across these segments. So I would like to start with Mr. Mohan, uh, talking about, other than these two policy initiatives, what we have seen till now, government mostly confining to supporting oil marketing companies or government entities only for the setting of the charging stations. So is there any plan for, supporting the private organizations also, or bringing them also in the entire ecosystem, and get support going forward, maybe through fame 3 or through any other scheme? Sure.
So thank you, Pratish. Thank you, organizers, for this opportunity. So if you look at the mobility segment, right, in last 2.5 years to 3 years, I think the number of charging stations are increasing year on year. And as per the latest Bureau of Energy Efficiency report also, there are close around 12,000 public charging stations. But I feel these numbers are quite low because like still there are many private CPOs who are adding up the public EV charging station. Specifically, if we look at the charging business, it has changed. The kind of the earlier business segment, which was mainly driven by the government CPOs, but largely we of late we see a lot of private CPOs are making a lot of investment in putting up the different set of charging stations for different vehicle segment. What has changed in last 2 years? If you look at 2019 to 2024, so basically we have seen the battery capacities are increasing, almost like the earlier version of electric vehicles, be it two-wheelers, be it three-wheelers, be it four-wheelers. Now it is almost like 2x the battery capacity what we see in the current electric vehicle model. It means the OEMs are able to bring in a kind of an range anxiety to some extent. They're able to resolve those range anxiety issues. But largely as CPOs presently we feel there's a concept of charge anxiety, which means is there any sufficient charging points are available in the market for the users to go and access the public EV charging stations? But to some extent, yes, there are charging stations, but there are inherent issues which is restricting or limiting the wider adoption of electric vehicles. One thing for sure, if you look at different vehicle segment, especially in the three-wheeler segment, the L5N category, the L5M category, I think has taken a big leap, especially in at least like leading the passenger mobility segment, especially for last mile connectivity purpose. And also we have seen a strong use case for last mile delivery also with a strong increase of take up by the e-commerce entities. This segment has taken a large leap in the electrification of the particular segment. Coming back to the four-wheelers, especially the B2B and B2C segment, I think some of the companies have taken a big step in electrifying their entire fleet. And some startups have at least ensured they have 100% fleets which are used in their B2B and B2C for the mobility purpose. This has given a positive indication to the CPOs to bring in more investment. Unlike the earlier, where we had different connectors for different vehicle segment in the four-wheelers, Now we see the consolidation is happening at the OEM level, especially in the four-wheeler segment is concerned. In the four-wheelers, we see now the most of the OEMs are preferring or inclined towards having the CCS2 connector. It is more like an OEM who are driving this uniform adoption of connectors, which is helping the charge point operators to at least like pull up, and build up more the charging infrastructure aligned to this OEM model. So in four wheelers, I think we're able to some extent, able to resolve these standardization issues. But when it comes to two wheelers and three wheelers, still we see different charging technologies. We see the battery swapping, we see the slow charging connectors, we see fast charging connectors, but still it's an evolving technologies. But as a company, we have put up close to 700 charging point across India. And mostly if you look at the utilization level, these are somewhere close around 3.5% to 6%. And some of these stations are doing exceptionally well, where we're able to achieve close to 35% on month basis. But if you look at the levelized utilization of these EV charging station, it's somewhere close around 4.5% to close around 6%. With these lower utilization, I think the payback and even the tenure for recovering those investment are quite longer. So what we need, because I think initial push by the public CPOs and even by the oil marketing companies are adding sufficient charging station, which will at least like helping the customers to at least rely on some of the basic infrastructure which is available for all different vehicle segment. Now, largely, I think the step has been taken by the private CPOs where they're putting up large captive hubs, which are primarily focused towards like the last mile delivery vehicles or for the passenger vehicles, where they're putting up in captive charging hubs for their own fleet, which are more reliable. And also, I think the economics works well for large hubs where the utilizations are compared by the fleet companies. So in a way, I think the private CPOs are taking a big step in ensuring the adequate charging infrastructure. But if you look at one of the major issues what CPOs face is on the real estate accessibility. So real estate primarily under the FAME 2 scheme was the incentive was more aligned, I would say, aligned to the public CPOs. The reason being it was an initial process of deployment of public charging station. The utilization was a concern, and even the technology was very nascent. So I think the initial incentive framework under the FAME 2 scheme was more towards like enabling that basic infrastructure for electric mobility to grow. The FAME 3, I would see a lot of changes, and I think there would be a lot of there would be an increased incentive arrangement for the EV charging stations. But if you look at the Delhi as an example, it's not only that the public CPOs are adding up the EV charging station. We have seen a lot of the private CPOs were also expanding wide network of charging station. And here, even the OMCs are playing a vital role here, where they are collaborating with private CPOs, and also they're collaborating with multiple battery swapping station operators also to expand the charging network. So real estate is a concern, which I think to some extent are getting resolved, where the public CPOs and the public landowning agencies are able to partner with the private CPOs to expand the charging network. Nonetheless, the apprehension on the FAME 3, where we feel like there has to be a wider participation of the private CPOs, we feel the mechanism of incentive have to be changed or restructured. If you look at the electric vehicle incentive framework, where the incentives are linked to the battery capacity of the electric vehicles, they give incentive in terms of like rupees per kilowatt hour. Can we have a similar arrangement for the EV charging stations, where perhaps like the companies who are putting up a higher capacity charging station, they could get the higher incentive framework rather than like having a uniform kind of an incentive structure. So this kind of incentive framework, that is what we are trying to uh, propose to the stakeholders also, to have a more structured incentive framework so we can have a wider participation of the private CPOs in leading this electrification segment. So these are my initial thought. Let me at least like take a pause.
Thank you very much for your inputs around this. Now I will move to Maxon on this because Mohan mentioned about two things. You know, one is the put why it was important to put the infrastructure by government, right? Even if the utilization was not much higher in the beginning, but going forward also, if you look at divide the infrastructure into part, one is the public infrastructure which personal vehicles are utilizing, and the second one, the fleet part of it. In the personal part of it, it's only 3 to 4% of the utilization, right? And the challenge is not only the utilization, there are much bigger challenges which we will discuss deeply. Maybe the charging cost is not uniform, reliability, too many applications, so many things are there. So, Maxon, what is your initial viewpoint about making this eventually profitable, right? And we cannot wait for decades and decades to make the business profitable, because your chargers again has to go for a different life. After 6 years or 7 years, you need to replace the chargers. With 4% of the levelized utilization, how do you foresee chargers becoming profitable, and your opinion about public for personal mobility and fleet, which one makes more sense?
I think thanks for that question. And just to go back context in time, at Magenta we started working in charging business way back in 2018. We set up India's first solar-based charging station, Bombay Pune Highway. And I remember panel discussions with Mr. Mohan, and the question at that time was whether electric vehicles by itself, kab hoga? I mean, that was the recurring question. And we used to insist and say, give it time, it will come through. From that time, Magenta also, if I wouldn't want to call it a pivot, but we grew along with the ecosystem, understood the ecosystem, and took punts. And we realized sooner or later that public charging has a utilization issue. Till the time we don't have that many electric vehicles on the road, utilization, even in a country like, let's say, China for that matter, the highest utilization on a public charging station is around 26% of it. So on a 24-hour cycle, number of hours. By definition, public charging has a challenge on utilization, because a lot of people prefer to do charging at their homes and offices. And that's where the investment by government was necessary, right? For something like a kickstart. And I think a lot of initiatives by ESL, etc., was taken, and government had to set it up. Now, because of those investments, whether they worked out or not, it's a different thing. But today we are talking about electric vehicle ecosystem in such a large forum is purely because of that happening. So I would say the viability losses at that point in time were picked up by the government of India, and which was expected. Only thing it could have been done differently, better, by taking a lot of industry consensus view. So now what's happening in the EV charging space, especially let's take at Magenta, we run three businesses. First is we run a fleet, India's largest three-wheeler cargo fleet. We crossed 2,000 odd vehicles. This is the L5 format and others. The second business is the charging infrastructure, chargers, and the R&D around it. And the third business is the pure technology play, the software required to run those vehicles and the charging infrastructure. So if you see, Magenta has also moved towards fleet charging. Now, very simply speaking, it supports our own fleet of vehicles. Today, my problem is I'm out of space, really, because my utilization on those charging infrastructure is so high that I'm now working with third-party players to provide me this charging, and in a certain way, supporting them. Now, even there, a lot of this fleet charging there are two types of fleet charging. One is the cargo and one is the passenger. The passenger segment is absolutely spot on. CCS2 is a decided protocol, unless and until Mr. Elon Musk tries to do something with the NACS standard. But net, I think India is going the CCS2 way. So that's sorted. So any investment in the fleet charging for passenger, it's something which is found its model, unit economics in place, utilizations are in place, and a lot of investments happening there. On the cargo side, I will just go ahead with what Mr. Mohan said, is there are a couple of, in fact, rather you also talked about it, is a couple of protocols are still in play. And I can name them as well. So there is a DC charging, which is the DC001, but there's a DC charging at 9.8 kilowatts. Then there is the typical IEC 60309. So these are the 2-3 formats which are still in play. We believe that give it a couple of months, and I think even there the rationalization is happening. In fact, that's happening every. So the unit economics in the cargo fleet charging is still to fall in place, purely on the back of protocol, and also the fact that these cargo vehicles have the battery size itself. So amount of energy per unit of time dispensed is slightly on the lower side. So this is where I would want to talk about. And public charging for me, and we did this assessment, if you were to look at any of the CPOs right now in the private space, doing some amazing piece of work, but do a quick balance sheet check. And you'll find that 80% of their revenue is not coming from personal charging, it is coming from fleet charging or other formats of businesses. So I believe the CPO format is still a couple of years away from profitability. Fleet charging, there's a certainty of profitability. And that's how I would want to put it.
Yeah, so one follow-up question, like for mass scale adoption, I think somehow public charging for personal mobility or the personal passenger car mobility has to happen in future, right? Now you have a lot of CPOs, number of CPOs, and as Mr. Mohan was mentioning, I think in CPO business also in future there is going to be consolidation happening. So, with what level of utilization these companies might be profitable? Because why I'm let me give you the background of my question. I think all of us are aware about 80% of the charging is happening at home, and only for the 20-25% of the time people are going. That is what we are calling as emergency charging, and I think that is with the current level of vehicle users who own independent houses or they have arrangements of charging. But if India, which targets for massive and rapid adoption of electric mobility, you need to add different set of consumers which may not have that kind of facilities which current buyers have. So when they are going to come, probably there will be a shift from home charging to public charging. Utilization might increase. So by when do you see these businesses also becoming profitable?
Sure. In fact, that's exactly what I try to talk about. Is when you talk about charging, it's very easy to use it umbrella statement in the charging. We already talked about fleet charging versus personal charging, and in personal charging also, I think it's important to go one layer lower. What you rightly said about residential charging, I call it community charging, and then public charging, which is on the highway. Now, an interesting fact is as compared to North America and Europe, where people have parking lots and hence they can charge at their homes, in India, we believe that this ratio may not be the 80-20. There will be a slight more, what do you say, charging happening at public charging. And that is going to be driven by how quickly the charging speeds or the higher capacity charges can be brought on. So I would peg anywhere around 60 to 70% charging on residential and less. So what allows now, public charging will have to be seen in two places. One is on the roads, and I will not want to qualify that because there is a real estate game,
Right.
right? It's absolutely not a charger or energy game. It's a real estate game. You find the lowest real estate or cost real estate, your unit economics team. But on the interesting side is the residential charging is where some, and I think India is very well pegged to find out solutions. I call it the community charging angle. I think there is a big angle possible. And you do a good mix of these two. Now, to give you a utilization percentage, I think anywhere on a DC charger, anywhere lesser than very high level, because it's a real estate game, I would say anything which is less than 25% utilization with a what do you say, hinged pricing model, because I think there is also some conversation around whether you can price it, what is the pricing structure. I think that's where there is going to be break even. That's my point.
No, thank you very much for giving the perspective around this, because we are trying to deep dive around utilization and the profitability. I'll move to the Rajat. Rajat, I think Sun Mobility needs no introduction, and you have been at forefront of popularizing the battery swapping model. Battery swapping definitely has a lot of implementation in two-wheelers and three-wheelers. Obviously, a lot of challenges around four-wheelers. It may or may not come. So, uh, what are the segments in which battery swapping is probably faring better, or I should say, solving challenges which the fixed charging is not able to solve? And is it more sustainable in comparison to fixed charging? Can we link it with the fleet charging kind of a business model? And what are your business plans in future to make it more sustainable?
Sure. Thanks, Pratish, for inviting us here and for the conference. So I'll actually break the answer into three or four segments. So for everyone who's here, Sun Mobility is a battery swapping infrastructure company. I'll just spend 10 seconds on who we are. It's quite simple. A rider comes with a fully discharged battery. puts his fully discharged battery into our swapping station, and within a couple of minutes, basically gets a fully charged battery out, and he's ready to sort of finish his work. Our current focus over the last couple of years has been the B2B segment, which is the two-wheelers and the three-wheelers. And within three-wheelers, we have e-rickshaws, um, loaders, cargos. Magenta is a critical partner, and also passenger segment, which is the B2C segment. These are potentially our four key segments that we focus on. In addition to that, we're entering into the HEV segment and as well as the four-wheeler commercial vehicle segment. Now, to answer Pratish's question, that what is the difference? What's the real sort of difference between a swappable model versus a fixed model? I think there are largely two or three glaring advantages that we see. One is obviously there's no range anxiety. You have something called a fixed range anxiety where now charges. If you are riding a fixed charging vehicle, you probably have to charge it for 3 to 7 hours depending on what charger you're using. But in a swappable vehicle, you potentially just need a couple of minutes to sort of recharge your battery and then move on to finishing your work. Second is you don't really have to worry about the battery per se, right? The whole advantage of a battery swapping system is that you're always going to get the capacity that has been promised you. So Sun Mobility, for example, will always provide you a fully charged battery out of a swapping station. And you can run your vehicle sort of at a much longer period without worrying about battery sort of getting depreciated or the depth of discharge happening on the battery. Just to give you a couple of examples, I mean, when we started off about 4 years back selling passenger vehicles, and I'll give you an example of passenger vehicles because that was one of our first vehicles that we've sold, which is the passenger auto. There are guys in Chandigarh and Kerala that have done about 150,000 kilometers on their autos, right? And they're very happy because you don't really have to worry about changing the battery for those vehicles. Similarly with e-rickshaws, I mean, there have been guys that run about 200, 225 kilometers a day. There are two-wheelers that run on the quick delivery and the e-commerce space that do about 150, 160. Magenta's fleet per se, I was telling him before this, there are a couple of guys that run to about 150 to 175 kilometers a day. So that's the advantage, right? I mean, there's a different use case for a swappable model which requires more running in a particular day. The fourth one is the third also main reason is you don't really have to worry about technology improvements, right, for the battery. One example which has recently happened with us is that we've increased our battery capacity from 1.55 kilowatt hour to 2.1 kilowatt hour. What does that mean? That means that does that mean you have to change your vehicle? No. Our dock and our battery are sort of aligned in a way that even old vehicle can take a new battery in. And that's the beauty of it, that even with the same vehicle you will potentially get a higher range of that swappable capacity. The so those are primarily the 3-4 reasons, the 3-4 advantages of battery swapping. To answer your next question on what are the challenges that we're facing,
Maybe we can park it for some
Sure.
time, and when I take up the next set of questions, you can. So now let me move to the Ueda-san. Thank you very much for joining the panel. I have two questions to you. First of all, you have been in the vehicle manufacturing, mostly the L3 part of the vehicle, and then now you are working a lot on the charge part of it, right? So in charging, you have CPOs, you have OEMs, you have EMSP players, and all of them have their own applications. Despite being a lot of fuss about having one application which can be utilized by all these stakeholders, probably that's going to take some time or may not happen in India. So my question to you is how you are solving the current consumer challenges. For example, let's say there is a consumer. If he wants to find a charging station, what exactly he is doing currently, he's checking at the Google that charging stations near me. Then he finds the charging station names, goes to that CPO or EMSP player application, downloads it, puts some money into the wallet and then goes to the charging station. Uh, there is no one unified application, right? So how you are trying to address these challenges, number one. And then a very funny question to you is, you popularize your company as a Japanese technology, right? So in this application building, what unique you are bringing from Japan, which probably Indian IT minds are not able to?
All right. Thank you very much. This is Ueda from the Terra Group, and then we are from Japan. And why I call Terra Group? Because as he said, we are doing the three business in this country. One is the Terra Motors, which is making the electric three-wheeler for the last 1 mile connectivity. And the second one is the Terra Finance. We are doing the EV finance by our own MBFC. And third is the Terra Church. So whenever we speak, we just call it Terra Group. And answering to your question, there is a lot of advantage by doing a three different business unit. And then if we talk about the accessibility of the charger, the one thing which I have and maybe other CPO doesn't have right now is the data. I'm telling you the detail. Now I'm putting the IoT device in our three-wheeler vehicle because once I finance the vehicle, I need to have the tracking function for just in case it's becoming the NPA, I mean default. For that, I'm having the entire IoT devices in the vehicle. So what I can see from my vehicle is their running pattern. I'm talking about the three-wheeler only right now. And by using those data, I know in which route they are using a lot and most, and then where they are stopping at. This kind of data we are having. So in terms of the accessibility, I can provide better solution compared with others because we know where you're running last night or last week. So in terms of the accessibility, that can be the one. And then for the payment or apps and all those, there is no common platform as of now for the charging, if we talk about, including even the swapping also. From the end user point of view, see, I don't care now because if I go to the IC vehicle and go to the gas station, we can get the CNG, we can get the petrol, diesel. The old function is already standardized, and then there is a common platform. So that kind of initiative is actually alone is very difficult to provide. So what I now try to do is try to tie up with a lot of maybe different CPOs, OEMs, or different stakeholders, and try to make up some common or not one platform which is beneficial for the end user. This kind of the movement I try to or proceed. So that is the answer for the first question. Yeah.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. For the second question, Japanese technology. Let me be frank here. Okay, there's no such a dream technology in this world from Japan. This is still number one in the world, right? Because now, these days, advanced technology is coming up in India, US, China even. So there is, not like outstanding only for Japan. But what we can having the, a good and strengths is the manufacturing part, even the tech part as well, because we are having the, or some kind of the unique platform which is only for Japan. So for example, like, or to connecting with the payment gateway and then, or bringing a more or technology which is used in a different, IT segment, like the AI, and then like e-commerce, all those things is quite developed in Japan, so we can bring up all those things. And then other thing is like the mindset. We always, what we do is not, we believe that the good thing will never happen in one day. So what we do is release to the market and learn from there and do the improving. We call it Kaizen. I think you may know about this word. So this push up Toyota to the number one manufacturer in the world. So we do it for the same work process, team building, and hiring, and making the product, and tap with the other partner. All those things we just keep just improving it. All those this mindset we are installing in the product and business strategy. That
Thank
maybe
you.
that's
Thank
it.
you very much. I am definitely sure about the technological competence and other values which are there. And also, I'm sure your application might solve some of these challenges. So, moving on very quickly to take inputs from Vikas ji about entire charging infrastructure and overall your initiatives around the electric mobility domain. And then I'll go to the Kumar asking about the unique business models or the financing models which you have in the market, because why I'm coming in the end to you is we need to understand each and every part of the ecosystem before discussing the financing, because it covers all, and every one of us needs support from unique financing models. So after Vikas ji, please give your opinion.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. Jai Hind, Jai Bharat, everyone. Uh, so, tell a little bit about VNT. We started in 2003 as a telecom power management company. We have been providing telecom chargers, which I will use the word here. We normally call it telecom rectifiers or telecom power supplies in the normal business world. But these are nothing but the chargers, 48 volts, which we have been supplying since long. And we have approximately 130,000 sites in India which are catered with our chargers. Why I'm telling you this is telecom is a field which requires high reliability, very high uptime actually. And when we talk about charging stations, of course, I would not say that they are less in numbers right now. If you look at the charging stations which are situated in your cities and ask yourself how much of these are being used at this time. So answer is there with you, you know. So time will tell that how much percentage of this are going to be utilized. And the panelists, honorable panelists have already told about this, so I'm not going to repeat the same numbers again. But what I see is, as we have seen telecom starting from costly G, because it was, very, I would say, status symbol kind of thing to have a cell phone at the time. And now we are at a time when basically, even 5G is so cheap. So same thing is going to happen in the EV evolution. That's what I see in future. Right now there are challenges, of course, in terms of the pricing, initial cost, the capital cost, where government is, giving some kind of subsidies. But if you look at the pricing of the batteries, which recently have dropped, and this trend, I believe, is going to be continued in future also, where the battery vehicles or the EV vehicles, basically, they will be at par or maybe cheaper than the petrol vehicles. And overall cost of ownership even now is less. Of course, with subsidy or without subsidy, if you look at the overall cost of ownership is less over a period of 6-7 years. And this is going to be further reduced. So on one side, there is no saying to the fact that the EV evolution is going to be marvelous, just like telecom. It is available everywhere in the country right now, and same is going to happen in EV in future. And me being a EV charger supplier company, see very huge prospects in India, huge potential in India with various pockets. One is, of course, as the colleagues here discussed about the public charging. I believe that this is a fuel which is available at home. It is not like oil and gas thing where you have to go to the petrol pumps. It is fuel which is available at home. You are given with a charger with the vehicles, and you can always charge your vehicle at the home itself. Of course, there are challenges with apartment owners and independent house owners. So these are topics which are known to all. But being a fact that charge is available at home, electricity is available at home actually. So the usability of the public charging networks by the car owners, that gives a little bit of question mark for let's say basically I live in Gurgaon. And if I'm able to charge my car at my home, why would I use a charging station there, right? So then I see, how many people are visiting Gurgaon from outside, and they will be using these charging stations. So charging stations will be required in numbers, cannot be simply linked to the residents of a city, but the number of visitors in that particular city. And I give a small analogy to 250 kilometers is the distance between two major cities right now. If that is the range available, we should not fear too much. Too much of anxiety should not be there in the charging station or to be present everywhere or so. So I see in future highway charging stations, they are going to grow quite good. City charging station will grow, but at the same time they will be utilized more by the visitors rather than the residents of that city. plus the home charging stations, definitely they will grow like, is a big growth that we can see there. On the other side, if you look at the technologies for fast charging technologies, I would say these are still available. It's not that for charger side, there is no issue on the technology. On the battery side, of course, there could be some topics which are to be addressed, but you have to imagine that for taking that much of charge in 10 minutes, you have to have that infrastructure actually. So it is not about charger, it's not about just the vehicle. You need an infrastructure which is giving the power to these chargers. Charger is just a converter of electricity, it's not a generator of electricity. So on the other side, we have to talk about the grid, and then grid has to be enabler basically to facilitate this kind of fast charging. So my point is, it's not a worrisome thing that we should not have that much of anxiety that range is not there or so. This is already there. Chargers are underutilized even now actually, and future is very very bright. And this is how I see it.
Thank you very much. Kumar, your insights, then I'll move to the separate set of questions.
Sure. So just a small introduction. I'm Shalya Gupta. I'm CEO of PHF Leasing Limited, which is an NBFC based out of Punjab, but we're currently operating in 10 states and UT across the country. So we are financing close to 2,000 vehicles a month, and we're primarily working in e-rickshaw and two-wheeler segment. So what we've seen is that we have a huge number of customers who are we'll call them self-employed and running e-rickshaw as a income generating activity, and we've never seen a customer complaint regarding the charging issue, right? Because when they move outside their home, right, once they've charged their vehicle, they know there's a range of 100 kilometers, and they are well aware about it, and they know their routes and what and how they want to plan everything. So the problem is not there that the charging stations are not available. The problem is that knowledge is not available yet, right? And that is the root cause of the problem. uh, you know if you ask a lot of people and a huge community, if I have a Tata Nexon charger at home, can I use it in my MG car or any other car? They won't know about it. So that's first part. Secondly, someone pointed out that 80% of the charging is happening at home and only 20% charging is happening at public stations. Uh, I would actually add another point to it. Out of that 20%, I think 18 to 19% would be for this e-rickshaw L5 segment, and where these people do not have charging facility at home. So if you look at the wide scale of mobilization of electric vehicles, charging is still a problem because people are not adopting because of, let's say, charge anxiety, inavailability of they don't have a knowledge about L1 and L2. So having said that, moving towards so I'm flooded with thoughts, so I'm just trying to gauge up as much points from the whole panel which is discussed regarding the swappable battery mechanism. Now, when we talk about swappable battery mechanism, and when we talk about adoption of swappable battery in my personal car or your personal car, the problem with Indian mindset is that we do not have that we do not get that ownership feeling if we don't own 100% of our vehicle, right? So an EV car, let's say, is 60-70% of car, and then rest is 30 to 40% cost is battery. So if you say I don't own 30% or 40% of my own car, I don't get that comfort zone. Now again, information and knowledge is the biggest problem here, but that's how we are tailored to, and this is one of the major reasons why the adoption of swappable battery mechanism is still less in the country. And even if one step forward, there's a very big we keep on communicating with our customers, we keep on talking with our customers regarding why you don't want a swappable battery system, or why do you want to own it completely. So yes, the range anxiety issues are solved by swappable battery, but the problem and the mindset that the customers have is, and I'm talking very grassroots level right now, is I bought a new vehicle. When I swap my battery, I might get a 2 year, 3 year old battery, right? So I don't feel comfortable with that. So that's one issue that comes out, and which creates a hindrance from a financing angle. When now I'm shifting to the financing side of it. What happens is that when your customer is not comfortable, and you've essentially financed 70, 80, 90% of the vehicle cost, what will happen is ultimately, if the customer is not comfortable after a month or 2 months or 3 months, and when they have a small bad experience, so let's say I go to a charging station and once or twice I do not find a charged battery, right? What will the customer do? Look, this is not working out for me. Let me put it back. I'll ask the financer to please take it away, and I don't want to have this vehicle anymore. Now the problem that comes is that, one, when you look at a commercial side adoption, they will have to do it. And swappable battery mechanism, they understand, because there is a platform over there where let's say a Zepto or a Blinkit can create a platform. You can go to the station and there is a battery available which is 100% charge or 80% charge, and it can take you to this much range. So in commercial activity, it is very easily doable. But when we come to personal vehicles,
Yeah,
that
definitely there are challenges in terms of
that challenges comes in,
acceptability of, in personal mobility, especially in passenger cars.
right?
So that I understand, that we understand. So do you have, I mean, unique financing models? If you can very quickly talk about it, then I'll switch to the other
Yeah,
part.
so financing model, I won't go into financing models of the vehicle itself. The charging station financing model. So we do vehicle loans and MSME business loans. So the fast way how we can create a huge adoption of vehicles is by a cross sell product or addition of charging as a service given to MSME owners, right? So if you go around NH1 or any national highway, there are small dhabas from from a 20-seater dhaba to a 100, 200-seater dhaba is available there, right? And obviously everyone has taken a loan, right? If we can actually embed a system where this is this becomes part of the business loan itself. It increases their business. Secondly, it helps them attract new customers, and it also solves a major problem regarding charging. Now the problem is, there is no knowledge about what is the profitability. So I was just researching before coming here. So there is a 30% gross margin which a person can roughly earn by installation of the charger. If he's, let's say, doing 100 charge cycles in a day, right? But so again, it's a cyclic theory, right? So if you want to install that, you have to create a cycle of that means electric vehicle adoption, and that again it just becomes a round cyclic thing. So that's the reason, and I think it will adopt. I think more and more personal vehicles coming in, and maybe a platform, maybe a lease kind of a model. So let's say I open up a platform where I lease out that space, let's say parking space. That becomes a major business option.
Yeah, understood. Obviously, unique financing models across charging infrastructure, vehicle has to be there, and I think we are also debating a lot on that side. So really glad to see your initiative, Maxon. In the beginning, you mentioned, 2 years back we were talking about whether electrification is going to happen in India or not. But I think that question is over. The debate is over. The electrification is going to happen. At what scale? I think that probably we need to see. And the timeline is more important than whether it is going to happen or not. And also, I understood your company manufactures chargers. So let me remind all of us that what is the national objective of moving towards any alternate powertrain or especially electric mobility? We talk about energy security, we talk about manufacturing import dependence, and we talk about the emissions. So let me bring that manufacturing import dependence perspective into it. So when you are, we talk about localization through PLI, through PMP, through different schemes for the vehicle side. But recently we started talking about localization or the local value addition in the charger manufacturing also. So because until or unless, because the kind of massive scale chargers are going to be in India, definitely requires certain level of local value add or localization. So what is the status of that in India now, and do you really see any support coming from government side like PLI or any kind of a scheme to enable more and more localization or local value add both in terms of AC and DC chargers?
Sure. That's an interesting question, and I'm going to make a controversial statement, like typically that I do straight on the faces. Till recently, I mean, a couple of years back, the charger components, the charger, and the Made in India sticker used to come from somewhere else. Right? And let's accept the fact that that's an ecosystem playbook, right? That's how it has to start. Fortunately, what happened is, unlike in the vehicle space, the charger R&D, a lot of R&D used to happen, and that was not, that was principally because of the voltage systems and the fluctuations, fluctuations in India. By the way, Magenta does a lot of R&D in the charger, AC charger space, and we soon realized that that's something we had to bring out a solution because no solutions existed. And a very simple point, I mean, the fact that the phase difference between, you know, there are three phases, and in India, the phase typically a 5% variable is allowed between two phases. In India, typically on average, we saw 7% was a standard, which means one phase out. I mean, many of us have seen it, noticed it, because there's a phase imbalance. All of it required us to invest into development of chargers which are local to India. Now, that was on need basis. Now let's come to the business side of it. Where exactly India, where I see, there's some amazing companies in India who have done a lot of localization. And from localization for me means replace the product which we imported to manufacture in India. But unknown to many, there's a lot of R&D happening in India. And it's happening at multiple levels. Earlier, it used to only happen at peripheral level. Now, even at the master controller level, there's a lot of things happening. And I think we should give it credits to those people in the IT space who set up those basics. And today, a lot of software on the charger, charging, is actually happening from India, and not much is spoken about it because finally the interface is something else. So, and there are good companies who already got invested. I mean, to think about it, there are 3-4 companies in the last 6 months in the hardware, charger hardware manufacturing, who have got invested. So, which speaks a lot of volumes about where it is. No, again, it's the meter lies in the how many vehicles, etc. I see this as an opportunity from here, do a lot of R&D and manufacturing, and it is now about time for us to ship it out to other countries, especially Africa and Southeast Asia, who face the same kind of challenges. And the world is looking for a China plus one nation. I think we are right there. It's just a matter of taking this opportunity and taking it ahead, both in the charger and the OEM. But since you asked about charger, I am very, very gung-ho about it.
Yeah, it's a really interesting to. I mean, we definitely want to position that plus one as India, but whether that is really happening or not, whether that is going to happen or not, I think requires a lot of discussion. So, Rajat, very quickly, if you talk about the localization situation in the swapping part of it also, because batteries are coming from definitely outside. So, so very quick on that, and then I'll take the perspective of Mr. Mohan on the localization part of it. Yes.
Sure. So, from a sun mobility perspective, I 100% agree with what Max just said. I think from a sun mobility perspective, we obviously assemble the batteries here. I think the cells obviously come from outside, but we're pretty much localized as much as we can be. From a battery swapping perspective, also it is sort of made in India. I think I I think India is sort of a very unique market, right? I think if let's not compare ourselves currently to maybe like a China or any other developing nation. I think we're going to leapfrog that very soon, right? So battery swapping per se was a Taiwan-based, started off in Taiwan, and I think within no time we're sort of going to leapfrog it because it's a very typical use case, right? So the the whole B2B commercial aspect of business in India is exploding like anything. Right? I mean, there's massive demand when it comes to food delivery apps like Zomato, Swiggy, Blinkit, Zepto, Big BB now, Amazon. It's just there is a lot of demand which we have to fulfill. The gig worker economy per se is growing so much in India, which basically makes it very viable for charging as well as swapping. I mean, there is no currently we're only talking about electric vehicle, which is tremendous. From a localization perspective, I think cell manufacturing is probably a couple of years away. I think when that happens, then it'll be fully made in India. Where I'd just like to add a few things for it to grow the way we want it to grow. I think the government has done significantly well when it comes to battery tech. by putting safety regulations. I think AIS phase two was very, very necessary, and everyone is sort of focusing on getting that done. But I think from an infrastructure perspective, and Mohan, who's here, has been in the forefront of sort of suggesting all this. I think Delhi, for example, has done, I think in December, they did 20% of all registrations as electric vehicles. The charging infrastructure or the swapping infrastructure requires, it's very easy to install a swapping or a charging infrastructure if you have LT connection. And it's very easy to get that connection and going and get that sort of installed. But when you, and Delhi has that advantage, right? I think it's up to 100 kilowatts that you have it, and then you can install multiple swapping stations or charging infrastructure there. When you go outside of Delhi, or you go to Bangalore, or you go to Gurgaon, for example, or you go to Noida, it's very challenging. Yeah. To get electrical infrastructure, it takes 4 to 6 weeks, sometimes 8 weeks, and you don't even know whether it'll come on time or not. And that is primarily one thing which is stopping the explosive growth of infrastructure in the country. The second, obviously, is age-old GST, from 18% to 5%. And if you have charging infrastructure, you're going to charge 5%, or actually 18% from a services perspective, and then from a battery swapping is also 18%. You have to understand that the person that is getting effective is the poor gig worker, because he's the one who's basically paying the GST of 18%, and that is how we should look at reducing it, not from a battery swapping, or not from a battery perspective.
Right.
So yeah, these are two critical
Thank you.
things
Thank
that
you
I'd
very
like
much.
to highlight.
Before Mohan, I request you, I will ask Vikas ji to give his perspective around possibility of local manufacturing of chargers, especially in India, because you are in that business.
Yeah. So my perspective will be like this: the power conditions in India, power conditions in China, they're different. Actually, the product has to be different. Right now, of course, as one of the panelists told, that even the sticker is being imported by most of the manufacturers. So this has to change for sure, for technical reasons also, not only for Make in India, but technical reasons also, because our voltage range in India, even in the villages, is 150 to 300 volt per phase actually. So these chargers cannot work, and many of the manufacturers who are just importing from China, they have burned their fingers already. Yeah. So product has to be at least redesigned for Indian conditions, and for that we need actually clear inputs from the field, number one. Number two, able engineers, not only in software, but in power electronics too. So our issue right now is the engineers in power electronics, because if you see the last decade, most of the guys, they were adopting either computer science or AI, or things like that. Those subjects were the quite famous subjects for most of the engineering students. So a challenge that is coming up is basically we don't have enough able power engineers, power quality engineers, and power system engineers, and power electronics engineers in the country. Of course, we are developing in-house, these engineers, the skills of these engineers. Secondly, of course, the semiconductor issue, which I believe will be sorted out. It's not a big issue for us. Third is software. Software is not a challenge for India. I believe we have plenty of guys, and overnight we can make the softwares here. So I see it quite positively. And the challenge that we see is and the second challenge, just one minute, is about the patents. Because when you go into the deep design, then you find that many of your ideas are already patented by somebody else, actually. So you walk between the empty parts of these patents and come up with the idea which is altogether new. So this is coming up in all the aspects, and hopefully we're going to solve it. Yeah.
Mohanji, is there any need for strict compliance for localization of charger manufacturing in India, or we can be a little, relax it for some more time?
See, at least to some extent, the Ministry of Heavy Industries has brought in that phase manufacturing
Yeah,
program.
why
So,
I'm asking
yeah.
this, when they brought the phase manufacturing program or the PLI or whatever schemes, I think government of India does a very good job in terms of being a little relaxed for some period of time. So my question is whether we need to be relaxed for some time in charger manufacturing, or now is the time to be very strict about it, because once these components start flowing from outside countries, probably it delays the entire initiative.
Yes, if you look at considering the fact that, see, we're also promoting PLI scheme, we're also promoting ACC local manufacturing also. So I think it's in short-term drawn process. So keeping that short-term target, I think we need to prioritize localization to some extent possible. The phase manufacturing program, I would say, I think the AC charger category, I think Indian companies are able to build complete made in India product. I think the DC chargers, still there are some of the components which are being imported, maybe like perhaps the rectifier, which one of the main component are getting imported. I think apart from that, even if you look at the cables, the power circuits, the cabinets, everything are, I think they're doing it locally. To some extent, localization is happening. I think right time, I think the India should push for mandatory localization and the compliance part also. This will help in two ways. One, we are able to become more reliable and sustainable in a long term, because we're also looking at putting up, say, close to 10 lakh chargers by 2030. That is the volume we are looking at by 2030. So considering that huge growth in the charging business, it's a right time. I think the country should look at localizing the technology and even the product manufacturing. And once we have this reliability in the product, I think we should look for the make for the world, and we should look for export opportunities.
Thank you very much. And it shows that time's up, so I have no liberty to extend it. But it was a really wonderful discussion. And I think there are a lot of developments, but a lot of questions also. For example, in charge of manufacturing or any kind of manufacturing, we talk about China plus one, but we also need to think about if we are not able to, bring the components or the technology from outside. So we need to be balanced in all across the ecosystem. Now I will open up this for a few questions. I think we can take 5-6 minutes more, and in case there are any questions, so please ask. Yes, please.
Hi, my name is Ishan. I just want start with a comment. We already localized the 25% of the BOM, which is the gun and the cable. We're sitting outside. So that's one part. What you said, it's already started. And the question for Maxon, you mentioned a lot of standards for charging. You didn't mention the 62196-6, which is the standard used by Ola, Ultraviolet, Torque, and many others. I think for two-wheelers, it's solid. Why didn't you mention it for three-wheelers?
No, that's an interesting question in development. So like Mohanji said, the industry will define it. That's being defined in the two-wheeler space, and things are coming together. In the three-wheeler space, I think what's happening is the three-wheeler is not run by a B2 at this point. Electric three-wheeler segment is largely driven by a B2B segment, right? And not by a B2C. So what's really happening is the B2Bs are able to solve it at a very localized level. There's no standardization demand. For example, let's take Magenta. We run a fleet of 2,000 vehicles. We localize the problem and solve it at that level. Unfortunately, there is no pressing and drying demand to the OEMs. I would believe it that way. And also, I think the OEMs are a bit more fragmented in the three-wheeler space. Statistically, there were 250 OEMs in the three-wheeler rickshaw segments, and now they've consolidated down to around 40. So that consolidation will still happen, and I think then in the two-wheeler space that has already happened, really speaking. The three-wheeler space, once that happens, then there's going to be consolidation of decision making also, and that time the standardization is going to happen. Now, one technical point over there. By itself, the three-wheelers are operating at a voltage system which does not have a standard charging protocol, either it's GBT or slightly lesser than that. So I think those conversations have started happening. The OEMs have started asking us, hey, listen, what charging standard we should go to? But at this point in time, no. I think we will continue to, for at least the next 3 to 4 quarters, till then there's something happening, we will still continue to have this 3 or 4 charging, I won't call it standard, it's just charging systems that will continue to exist. That's my take on, and that's probably one of the reasons why we as Magenta are driving a lot of discussions, at least in the charging side. So not yet, but I would hope that it happens faster, because we own fleets. I don't want any redundancy, especially on the charging side.
Thanks, Maxon. Do we have any more questions? Yes, please.
Hi, my question is for Maxon, Rajat, and maybe Vikas. Battery swapping versus fast charging. While battery swapping takes care for the upfront cost, the fast charging takes care of the range, I see. As we move progress, potentially the battery cost will go down. So that area will be addressed. At some point, we'll be debating on ease or accessibility. So at that point, how do you debate on the viability between battery swapping to fast charging? First set of question. Second set of question is for Akihiro. You mentioned data monetization. It's perfectly all right when you own the asset per se. Moment the asset is not yours. Currently, we don't have GDPR laws, but at that point, how are you going to monetize that data when the asset you don't own?
So I'll ask Rajat to answer the first question, but thanks for starting a fight out here on stage between charging and swapping. But Rajat, over to you.
So, like to be politically correct, I think both of them coexist. Obviously, personal view is that, and I've had this discussion multiple times with so many people, is that fast charging is nothing but giving steroids to the battery, so the battery health probably gets affected. I think Max would agree to that point. It obviously is faster, right? And you do get the battery in 15, I mean, get it charged in 15-20 minutes, but you do affect the battery life. Battery swapping probably provides the same without affecting the battery life. And because we own the asset, it is it is in our interest to protect it and make sure that it lasts as many cycles as possible, and also invest into the battery which last us and give us more cash flow. Leaving the battery to a third party which makes revenue out of it, I feel is more beneficial to actually, if you focus on getting your fleet done or running your vehicle, which is what the big difference is. I don't know whether you want to add something.
I'll keep it short, but yeah, you need to. I always say that talk about a use case. Fixed batteries has a use case which is more universal. Battery swapping also has a use case, may not be as universal but very specific. So I think when you just go down to that level, I think battery specific is for places where there is no electricity continuity. You are able to store electricity, quickly charge, etc. That it makes sense. From a finance perspective, I think it would make sense because and we should deflect the question away from the speed of charging. I think that's not the question that swapping should answer. The swapping should answer the financial angle to it. I think the moment you do change the question to that, suddenly swapping does become sensible. In fact, in Delhi, Sun Mobility is the front runner in this case. I think there are close to around 6 companies who operate on a battery swapping model on L3 segment and successfully building businesses around it. So I wouldn't want to write off. I have a view technically, but at this point in time, it makes business sense from a use case specific.
Next question with Shalya.
So answering the question to you, so data mining itself doesn't make the direct impact for the financial part. However, there is some companies already approached us to purchase that data to have the analysis of the learning pattern of the 3-wheeler, because they are actually providing they are one of the CPO, and they want the data which area is good location to place the charger. So these kind of things can be monetized and commercialized. And another thing is like for our business, like I said already, since we have the data of the running pattern, we know where is the best location for the 3.3 charger, for example, for 3-wheeler. So by having data, we can have the advantage to emphasize or to put more or economic sense in the different business, which is like the charger. That is my answer to you. Yeah.
Please.
Since financing is the back end of electric vehicle per se, I'll just add, to the battery fast charge versus swapping. Both are here, both are going to stay. One single line answer, B2B and B2B2C swappable batteries for next 2-3 years, and B2C fast charging for next 2 to 3 years at least. So that's as simple as that.
Thank you very much. All of us are here, so in case you have any questions, probably you can catch up with all of them later. Thank you very much.